Hey everyone, today I'm painting something totally different. I will paint a Khorne blood warrior, but here is the twist. I'm using only the new AK Interactive QuickGen. That means no normal acrylics, no metallics, just QuickGen. One coat, high contrast, perfect to paint a whole army. But can they handle something so gritty, brutal and detailed like a Khorne blood warrior? Let's go. Let's start with the priming. For this I'm using a grey primer, Cosmic Grey from AK Interactive. These are the dual exo paints which work perfectly for priming. On top of that I'll add a strong Zenithal highlight using extreme white. I'm applying both layers with an airbrush. Of course you can also use spray cans, start with grey and then go over it with white. Or just go straight to white if you prefer. Personally, I really like the natural shadow effect you get from Zenithal priming. It helps to add depth to the base coat, which will make our later work stand out even more. Now our blood warrior is fully primed. Even with the Zenithal highlight, he still looks a bit flat. So in the next step, I'm going to apply light gray over the entire model to bring out more depth in the individual surfaces. Here you can see me using an unthinned coat of paint with a flat brush, carefully dragging the color across the whole miniature. I make sure it doesn't pull too much on the larger surfaces and instead flows into the recesses and crevices. Right now it may look a bit patchy and opaque, but don't worry, it will dry down quite transparently. And this is what it looks like fully dried after the light gray has been applied over the entire model. Next we move on to the colors. Before choosing the right tone, I take another look at my color reference. My color swatches really help with that decision. They make it easier to pick the exact shade I want. In this case I'm going for a darker, more saturated red rather than something with an orange tint. But before that, I start painting a few areas black, like the feet. I'm using AK's QuickGen black here. When applied in a thicker coat, I really like the finish it gives. Just be careful, since it's a fairly thick paint, it can leave streaks if you're not paying attention. It helps to thin it slightly with a bit of water and apply it in 2 smooth layers. With the boots done, we move on to the red. I'm using crimson red here for this step. Now we're getting into the trickiest part of the whole process, carefully painting all the red areas within the golden borders. I make sure to avoid touching the unpainted gold trim, since the QuickGen gold paint is slightly transparent. If I slip, it's hard to fix, and the goal here is to keep things moving efficiently. So I take my time and paint slowly and carefully. This isn't a model that goes quickly with this technique. It takes patience. Since this part takes a little while, I'll speed things up here. I'll check back in once all the red areas are complete. When it comes to the gold, I'm choosing between two shades, old gold and bronze. Both lean toward a golden tone, but in the end I'm going with bronze. While old gold is a beautiful color, it has a bit too much of a yellow tint for this project. I even did a test trim with old gold, but it looked a little too warm for my liking, so I went over it with bronze instead. Now I'll start painting all the remaining trim and armor details using bronze. Once again, patience is the key here. I recommend switching to a slightly smaller brush for more control. Personally, I'm using a natural hairbrush here, but synthetic brushes can work really well too. Just like before, I let this part run in time-lapse since it involves a lot of slow, careful painting. I'll check back in once all the gold trim is finished. For the next metallic step, we are using darker silver tone, dark steel. I'm applying this to all the remaining armor details like the blade of the axe, the chainmail sections, and the area above the helmet crest. This is a very dark metallic silver, but it flows beautifully into all the recesses and And now we're slowly reaching the final stages of the model, painting in all the smaller details. Starting with the bone elements using bone brown. That includes all the skulls as well as the fabric wrapped around the weapon's handle. There's also a small bit of exposed skin on our blood warrior, and I'm painting that using the color human flesh. At this point everything is basically painted, but I want to give the whole model a more unified look, almost like a streaking grime effect. The idea is to make it look a bit dirtier and more worn. So once again I looked through my color samples and decided to go with dirty gray. Of course, a model like this only truly comes to life once the eyes are painted. In this case, we have small white eye slits, and I wanted to give them a slightly eerie, ghostly tint. So after painting them white, I gave them a subtle glaze using Spectral green. And here we have the finished model, but of course it still needs a fitting base. For that, I'm using my favorite basing material from Crowdcover, A Tale of Grim Dark. To give the model a bit of height, I'm adding a broken piece of bark, which I fix in place using texture paste from AK Interactive. I like to thin the paste slightly with a bit of water for easier application. Once that's down, I press the bark piece into the still wet texture and even add a bit more paste on top to give it additional structure. While the paste is still slightly damp, I sprinkle on my Crowdcover mix. To secure some of the larger elements from the mix, I add a bit of extra glue as well. To add some color to the base, I'm using inks from AK, without priming the base first, although you absolutely can if you prefer. The inks have such a strong coverage that they work perfectly even when applied directly to basing materials. I'm using a very dark purple tone, Aubergine, and a black tone called Vanta Black, both applied with the airbrush. To bring out more texture, I add a light grey dry brush over the surface. Then I repaint the bones using bone brown, just like on the model. And to give everything a more realistic, earthy look, I apply liquid animal pigments like this one here, Dark Earth. And to tie the model to the base, I also paint the boots and some of the lower parts of the models with the liquid pigments. And now that the pigments have dried, our model is truly complete. All in all, this took me about an hour, not exactly fast, but considering the complexity of the model, I think that's perfectly fair. We painted everything using AK QuickGen paints, and I have to say I'm really happy with the result. The silver and gold tones in particular hold up beautifully against traditional acrylics. They offer great depth, go on smoothly, and look fantastic. If you're looking to get armies on the table more quickly, this is definitely a technique I'll be sticking with. Of course, you could also still take it a step further with some edge highlights in gold or red, but honestly, even as it is, it's a great way to build a quick and cohesive army. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something new and that it could spark your interest in the AK QuickGen range. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. See you next time.